Hello, I'm going to do a tool talk today. Now, this is not a health and safety talk. A tool talk is just about the tools. It's done at the beginning of the project day alongside the health and safety talk as part of your volunteer training. Now the tool talk covers 7 main aspects which is important to get across to your volunteers. We'll go through those in a second and I'll demonstrate them with the tools that we've got here. It's always good to try and do your tool talk at the beginning of the day around facing your volunteers where the central tool location, storage location is going to be. This reinforces the fact that you want your volunteers to bring the tools back and store them safely here. There's 7 main things that you need to get across in your tool talk. You can give this verbally or you can show them, demonstrate them. Still getting the information across, probably in a nicer way for you. Now obviously it's important to name the tool, including any common names. Makes it easier when you're working on site. What it's used for and how to use it. So how to use it's always good to be demonstrated. And then it's important that all your volunteers know all the safety checks that they must do on the tool before they use it. And then how to carry it on site. So that's very important as well, part of health and safety. And then where to store it. So initially on site in a central location. And then also how to store it properly in the workshop might be worth a mention. And then also finally how to maintain it. This is especially important when you're maintaining tools on site for a job. Right, we're going to be doing some hedge laying today, so I'm just going to go quickly through the tools that we're going to be using. So the main tools that we're going to be using for the hedge laying are the bill hooks. We've got the single bladed bill hook here, often called the Southern style, or we've got the double bladed, often the Staffordshire or the Yorkshire. Now remember when you've handling swinging tools, always to not wear a glove on the hand that you're holding the tool. This gives a nice firm grip. Okay? So I'm just going to go through the safety checks that you need to do when you pick up the tools. Check the blade, check that there's no cracks or anything on the metal. Check the edge of the blade to see if it's sharp. Check the handle to see if there's any cracks or anything like that, and then check that they're both securely together. You don't want it to go flying off. When you're using the bill hook, make sure that it's always turning away from your body. Okay? And then make sure that your working area is nice and clear and there's nothing that the bill hook's going to get caught up in. Always make sure that you wear your safety boots and that you've got the right gloves on. You might be wanting to wear goggles if you're working around thorns. When you're transporting it around site, carry it down by your side so that it doesn't cause injury to yourself or other people. When you're storing it, when you're not using it, it's in a central location on site, but if it's in your work area, you can store it within arm's distance, but don't store it right underneath, otherwise it's quite likely that you're going to miss it and cut yourself on the blade. You're going to have to probably maintain the bill hook during the day, because as you're cutting it will get blunt. We'll be using the whetstones for those, so if anybody's not sure on that, you can come back later and we can sharpen them all together. Make sure that you don't use a blunt tool because that's more likely to cause injury to yourself and other people. Right, gloves back on for the bow saw. Bow saws come in different shapes and lengths. They've got 2 different blades as well. This is the dry blade because it's got regular teeth on the blade, whereas the wet blade's got a semicircular indents along the blade. This is one of the most common tools that is used, so I understand that you might have used them quite a lot, but we're just going to run through some of the main health and safety points. When you're check it over, make sure there's no damage to the orange part, make sure that the blade is nice and tense, there's no rust and it's securely in. Check the pivots at either end and check the handle's secure. When you're using the bow saw, always make sure that your hand is steadying the log and that you're wearing a glove, because bow saws are quite likely to jump. So when they get jammed in the log, they can kind of jump and you can end up cutting your own hand. When you aren't using it, store it back in the central location on site. If you're using it in a certain area, lay it down flat within arm's distance. Don't hang it on trees or anything like that. Keep it nice and safe and secure. When you're carrying it, as with the bill hook, make sure it's down by your side so it's less likely to cause injury to you and others. To maintain it, it's quite tricky. You need a workshop with a lot of light. So put it back into the bag and pick another tool if it's become damaged. And this prevents loss to either of the pins and damage to any of the new blades. Got the loppers, still got my gloves on. These might seem quite straight and simple, but it's still important to go through the process. These are your ratchet loppers, because as you can see here, they're ratcheting back up to shut. The first thing I'm going to do is just quickly check the blades, check that there's no cracks and that the metal hasn't flaked away. Check they're nice and sharp and that they're opening and shutting sensibly so that there's not so much strain on myself. These have got extendable handles, so check that they're working properly and that they're not likely to come flying out when you're using it. So this is going to be used to clear away any brash to get to the hedge, but remember, do not use it to cut anything larger than a thumb size. If you do that, they will damage the tools and then you won't be able to use them in future. When you're not using the tool, as always, remember to return it to the central location on site. If you're using it in your work area, again, place it to the side so that you're less likely to trip on it or damage the tool. Most important thing when carrying these is make sure that you always carry them down by your side, this way up, rather than this way up, because they'll fall down then. This minimises damage to the tool, yourself and others. These probably won't need maintaining on site, however, when we take them back to the workshop, if there's any problems with any of the blades or any of the springs, then obviously just tag it, leave it on the side and I'll deal with it later. Right, finally, we've got the flasher, gloves off. This is another swinging tool, so don't wear gloves on either hand. This is going to be used again for getting rid of the grass getting up to the hedge. Now it's really important with this, if you can't dry the blade off and it's raining, don't use them because this reduces your ability to grip the tool safely. Quickly just give it a look over, check the blade, check the edge to see if it's sharp, check the wooden bit for any splinters, any cracks, and check that it's together safely. You must not use the tool if safe working distances haven't been established. So it's twice the length of this. You should be working away from other people and any kind of objects that can do damage. Safe carrying is right down here, so keep your hand all the way down the end of the blade. Make sure that the blade is pointing backwards, so don't carry it over your shoulder or anything like that, because it's more likely to damage the tool and cause injury to yourself. Remember not to ram it into the soil, it's just a swinging motion like that. Kind of grab the grass together and rake it along. As with the bull hook, these might need maintaining on site, so we will use the whetstones again to sharpen the blade to reduce environmental damage, so ripping up of the vegetation or injury to yourself and others. When you're not using it, store it in the central location on site so it doesn't get lost. When you stopped using it for a task, you can keep it next to you, but make sure that it's nice and flat down. Don't lean it up against any trees or anything because it's more likely to fall over, hurt someone or get lost.